Thanks for tuning in to Local News Live, a production of AOC Community Media in partnership with the Acadiana Advocate, our source of local print journalism. And we are glad to bring you the public service of reading the print journalism that's provided by the Acadiana Advocate every Monday through Friday, most Mondays through Friday, because we may or may not be here tomorrow, depending on the severity of the storm, but we're going to try and still provide this service. But between the hours of 9 and 10 a.m., we bring you this public service, and we could not do it without the generous volunteer efforts of our newsreaders, people like the wonderful Mr. Bruce Cohen, who's here with us this morning, before he prepares to plan for the storm. So thanks, Bruce, for being here on this hectic morning.
Well, thank you, Matt. And as always, I absolutely love you being my engineer.
So, it is a great time for all. I'm going to go listen online. Thanks, okay. Bruce.
You're welcome, Matt. Well, good morning, Acadiana. This is Thursday, October 8th, 2020. Like Matt said, we are bracing, as you all know, we are bracing for Delta. So most of the stories, obviously, from the newspaper are related to that event. So let's kick it off with Hurricane Delta. Delta posed for Friday landfall by Mark Schiffelstein, staff writer. A slightly weaker but still dangerous Hurricane Delta is posed to deliver life-threatening storm surge, Category 2 force winds, and heavy rain along the central Louisiana coastline when it slams ashore just west of Avery Island on Friday afternoon, according to the National Hurricane Center. Officials across Acadiana urge residents to prepare quickly for a direct hurricane strike. Most forecasters put landfall near the Cameron and Vermilion Parish border as a Category 2 or 3 storm, with wind gusts up to 70 miles per hour and occasional gusts of 100 to 120 miles per hour. Because Delta is a relatively fast-moving storm, wind is expected to be its biggest threat. However, storm surges could reach dangerous levels with potential for up to 10 feet in parts of St. Mary, Vermilion, and Cameron parishes. In a Wednesday afternoon news conference, Governor John Bel Edwards warned that if Delta took a jog to the east, as Hurricane Sally did last month, New Orleans could be squarely in its path. A slight shift west could provide another devastating blow to southwest Louisiana in the Lake Charles area, which is still struggling to recover from Hurricane Laura. He also warned that Delta would remain a dangerous wind and flood threat throughout its 24-hour journey across the state. Delta is forecast to be a hurricane as far north as central Louisiana too, Edwards said. We saw this with Hurricane Laura when not just speaking to Louisiana residents in the coastal area of the state, we're speaking to everybody in the state of Louisiana today. And in fact, we don't expect the hurricane to become a tropical storm until the time it exits northeast Louisiana. Edwards said President Donald Trump has already called him about the state's request for a federal emergency disaster declaration, which would make the state eligible for reimbursement of emergency expenses associated with Delta. Edwards said Trump promised to sign the request. Trump tweeted Wednesday that he had spoken with Edwards and Texas Governor Greg Abbott and urged residents in the path of the storm to stay safe. In a 4 p.m. Wednesday forecast, the Hurricane Center said the storm would have 105 mile per hour winds when it was about 30 miles off the coast at 1 p.m. Friday. The storm is then expected to cut diagonally across the state, entering Mississippi north of Vicksburg at midday Saturday. A hurricane watch, meaning hurricane conditions are possible within the next 48 hours, is in effect from Grand Isle west to High Island, Texas, and a tropical storm watch is in effect from east of Grand Isle to Bay St. Louis, Mississippi. Lakes Pontchartrain and Marape are within the tropical storm watch area. A storm surge watch is in effect from High Island to the Alabama-Florida border, including Calcasieu Lake, Vermilion Bay, Lakes Pontchartrain and Marapel, and Borg and Mobile Bay. Surge levels of 4 to 7 feet are expected between Cameron and Pecan Island, increasing to between 7 and 11 feet between there and Port Fourchon, including Vermilion Bay. From the port to Ocean Springs, Mississippi, the surge could be between 4 and 6 feet. In Lakes Marapai and concentrating the surge could be between 3 and 5 feet. Delta will be accompanied by heavy rainfall and well inland of its landfall, with 6 to 8 inches expected in Alexandria, 4 to 6 inches in Lafayette, and 2 to 3 inches in Baton Rouge. New Orleans is expected to see only a maximum of 1.5 inches of rain. However, forecasters warn those totals could dramatically increase beneath the storm's rain bands. A flash flood watch is in effect for areas west of Interstate 55 in Louisiana, including the Baton Rouge area, from Thursday night through Saturday. Forecasters also warn of the possibility of tornadoes in some of the storm's rain bands as they move ashore to the east of its center. New Orleans officials urge more than 6,000 Laura evacuees staying in New Orleans hotels not to trek back to southwestern Louisiana late this week for fear they could get caught up in Delta's impacts. The state has temporarily suspended orders requiring evacuees to leave the hotels when power and other services has been restored to their homes, City Homeland Security Director Colin Arnold said. Anyone who has already left the shelters and seeks to evacuate ahead of Delta should call the state at 211 to be assigned to a new hotel, he said. On Grand Isle, 2 separate efforts were underway to repair levees damaged during previous storms. In early June, Tropical Storm Cristobal damaged nearly 2,000 feet of the levee protecting the island's southwest side. Waves gouged through about 85 feet of sand to reach the shore. The levee's core wrapped a tube of clay known as the burrito. On Wednesday, Louisiana National Guard troops were depositing 350 3-by-3-foot super sacks of sand along the eroded area as reinforcement, paid for by the State Coastal Protection and Restoration Authority. Jefferson Parish is funding an emergency repair of a levee on the north side of the island. A mandatory evacuation goes into effect for Grand Isle at 6 a.m. Thursday, a parish spokesperson said. Terrebonne Parish President Gordy Dove ordered a mandatory evacuation effective at 4 p.m. Wednesday for areas outside the hurricane levee system in the Houma region, and said an evacuation of mobile homes within the levees might be required if Delta's effects worsened. About 35 families live outside the system. Nearly all of them have homes on Isle de Jean Charles, a flood-prone island near Montaigut, that is the focus of a federally funded relocation project. The island's residents are well rehearsed in evacuations and likely will stay with friends and family further inland, Dove said. On Wednesday, a weakened Delta hammered Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula with winds of 85 miles per hour, before gliding into the southern Gulf of Mexico, where it was expected to intensify to a low Category 3 or major hurricane strength, with top winds of 150 miles per hour expected at 1 a.m. on Friday. That strengthening will result from Delta passing over deep warm water in the southern and central Gulf in the absence of disruptive upper-level wind shear, said senior hurricane specialist Daniel Brown in a 4 p.m. forecast discussion message. But after that, as the storm is dragged north by a trough of low pressure expected to be moving into Texas, Delta will run into increasing wind shear and cooler waters as it approaches the west central Louisiana coastline, which will result in lower wind speeds, he said. But Delta's wind field also is expected to expand, increasing the area it will affect with both wind and rain when it goes ashore. Regardless of landfall's intensity, life-threatening storm surge and strong winds are likely over a large portion of the northwestern and northern Gulf Coast, Brown said. All of Acadiana bracing for hurricane-force winds by Kristen Askelson, staff writer. As Hurricane Delta pelted Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula as a Category 2 storm and headed for the Gulf Coast, gaining power on the way, Acadiana residents began preparing for hurricane conditions. Most of the region on Friday could see wind gusts up to 70 miles per hour, with occasional gusts of 100 to 120 miles per hour, particularly along the coastline. Delta, the sixth tropical storm to impact Louisiana this year, is expected to make landfall along Vermilion Bay. It could be particularly troublesome for residents of Vermilion, Cameron, and Calcasieu parishes who were hammered in late August by Hurricane Laura, a powerful Category 4 hurricane that was the strongest to ever make landfall in Louisiana by some measures. As of Wednesday afternoon, Vermilion and Cameron parishes had issued a mandatory evacuation orders. The Cameron Parish Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness issued the order for most of the parish effective at 6 a.m. Thursday. In Hackberry, area south of Kelso Bridge, must evacuate as water is expected to cover the road. Areas must be evacuated before tropical storm force winds arrive, which are expected by 6 a.m. Friday. In Vermilion Parish, a mandatory evacuation order was issued for low-lying areas prone to flooding. The Vermilion Parish Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness issued the following statement. If the storm maintains its current track, projected strength as a Cat 3 or higher, it will cause massive tidal flooding with a possible 11-foot or higher storm surge and catastrophic wind damage to structures in Vermilion Parish, creating a very dangerous situation to include loss of life. For Vermilion residents without transportation, buses will stage at North Vermilion High School from 6 a.m. to noon Thursday to transport residents to a statewide staging area in Alexandria. Utility providers working in Acadiana on Wednesday were hurriedly seeking contract workers from outside the area and preparing to accommodate them. Mary Laurent, spokesperson for Slemco, which provides power to 109,000 customers in Acadia, Arroyos, Badger, Iberia, Lafayette, St. Landry, St. Martin, and Vermilion parishes, said the co-op likely will need some 250 outside contractors to restore power after the storm hits on Friday. She said contract workers would work from the Slumco location in Cameron Crow, while company and workers would work out of Slumco's new quarters on US 90. All customers should make immediate plans and be prepared, she said. Everyone should be checking supplies and making an evacuation plan now for their family. LUS, or Lafayette Utilities System, was preparing Wednesday for storm damage, expecting some 600 people, mostly line crews and tree trimming crews, to join LUS workers in restoring power. Alex Antonowicz, public information specialist, said LUS would stage for the storm for the Cajun Dome as it did for Laura. He said a total of 1,000 to 1,200 workers would be preparing for anticipated problems. Of particular concern is securing enough bed space to accommodate visiting workers who might be here for an extended period depending on damage. Antonowicz said crews would reposition themselves outside the projected cone of the storm's path. Once here, he said, some will be housed in area hotels. LUS has arrangements for other rooms, and some will be housed at the Cajun Dome. Even in areas without a mandatory evacuation order, officials were warning residents to seriously consider leaving as hospitals and other essential services made preparations to weather the storm. Tricia Thompson, spokesperson for Ochsner and Lafayette General, said the system's hospitals have been preparing for Delta's arrival since Monday. The hospitals have emergency response and hurricane plans that are implemented as needed by an incident command team made up of emergency response employees and executives. We've had lots of practice with the last two storms this season, and obviously with several others over the years, Thompson said. Routine storm prep at Ochsner and Lafayette General Hospitals include testing and topping off fuel for backup generators, identifying and repairing plumbing issues. Checking roofs for leaks and testing backup technology. Hospitals have also been discharging patients when safe to do so to make space for an increase in patients injured during and after the storm. It's a well-oiled machine when it comes to storms in South Louisiana, Thompson said. We have a very experienced and calm and confident staff that understands preparation is key, and we feel very prepared for whatever the storm may bring. We're, as I say, preparing for the worst and praying for the best. Our Lady of Lourdes Regional Medical Center was also preparing for the storm. Storm preparation for a hospital begins like most families prepare for a hurricane, said Elizabeth Arnold, spokesperson for the hospital. Early this week, we secured additional provisions such as food, supplies, medications, fuel, and linens. From there, we confirmed staffing plans and encouraged our team members to make arrangements for the safety of their families. we began contacting physicians' offices and patients to discuss rescheduling procedures and appointments pending the track of the storm. We stand ready to serve our community. St. Mary Parish President David Hangegriff issued a voluntary evacuation for areas south of the Intercoastal Waterway, including the Sycamore Point and Burns Point areas. Additional evacuations may be ordered Thursday if the hurricane's projected landfall shifts. David Naquin, the director of the St. Mary Parish Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness, said on Wednesday. Projected landfall was Grand Isle early in the week. Now it's the Cameron and Vermilion Parish line, which should mean less severe winds in St. Mary Parish. Naquin is particularly concerned about storm surge from Delta. Even at the Cameron Vermilion line, Sycamore Point is going to catch it, he said. Areas not protected by levees or flood control structures, including Louise and along the LA 318 corridor, Ashton, Glencoe, and Four Corners, could catch the storm surge, Naquin said. Areas farther inland also are vulnerable to some storm surge traveling up waterways, Naquin said. Workers were closing floodgates on the Franklin Canal on Wednesday to protect against the storm surge and driving street pilings to close off the Charenton Drainage Canal because a flood control structure under construction there isn't complete. East of Calumet, the Morgan City and Berwick areas are better protected with higher levees built for flood stages on the Chafalaya River, Naquin said. Floodgates along the river at Morgan City and Berwick were being closed Wednesday. Naquin says he's being told Delta could make landfall at a Category 3 and quickly deteriorate to a Category 1 storm by the time it gets to the Interstate 10 corridor, which isn't far. We're still going to have our problems, he said, from possible tornadoes, trees, and tree limbs falling and power outages. The good news is Delta is moving fast, so Louisiana shouldn't be subjected to more than 5 or 6 hours of impact. Okay, moving on to other Acadiana news that isn't storm related. Petition challenges council hiring. Filing says attorney acting without authority by Claire Taylor, staff writer. Excuse me. Attorneys for City Parish Attorney Greg Logan filed a petition Wednesday asking the court to require the special attorney hired by the Lafayette City Council to show by what authority she was hired. Logan alleges in the petition that Leanne Baston of Baton Rouge holds no such office as acting without authority and is usurping the authority of the city parish attorney. City Councilman Chairman Pat Lewis, contacted early Wednesday afternoon, said he was unaware of Logan's petition. City Council voted September 1st to hire Baston as their special counsel on disputes over the budget and home rule charter that had surfaced during budget discussions this summer. Parish Mayor President Josh Guillory vetoed the move, but the council overrode the veto and hired Baston, who advised the City Council prior to the final budget approval meeting. In his September 24th letter, Logan terminated Batson, but Lewis replied that Logan doesn't have the right to do so. Separate city and parish councils were created with a voter-approved home rule charter amendment in 2018, and the new councils were sealed in January. One of the main reasons behind separate councils was to give city taxpayers more autonomy over use of the city-only tax revenue. The 2021 budget was first heard by separate city and parish councils since consolidated government took form in 1996 with the combined city parish council. Disagreements arose during budget discussions this summer over when only the city council could vote on budget items and when only the parish council had authority over budget items. LCG, or Lafayette Consolidated Government's legal team, opined in line with Guillory and the parish council, giving the parish council authority over city tax dollars if the department was parish-wide, but all the revenue was from city taxpayers. Logan, hired by Guillory and assistant city parish attorneys, were supposed to represent both councils and the mayor president according to the home rule charter. City council decided to hire its own authority to protect its city interests over the objections of Logan, who advised it would be violating the home rule charter and possibly by the law. In the petition to the court filed on behalf of Logan, attorneys with a newer Pate law firm said the city council could override a mayor-president's veto only after the veto message is published in full in the official journal. In this case, the city council did not publish 17 footnotes in Guillory's veto message that refer to legal cases or opinions. Therefore, they argue the veto override is not valid. City council ordinance to hire Batson also is deficient, Logan wrote, because it does not specify the amount she will be paid, which is required in the charter. City parish attorney, the petition states, is the chief legal advisor to the mayor president, city and parish councils, and all departments, offices, and agencies of city parish government. All assistant attorneys serve at the pleasure of the city parish attorney, he wrote, and the councils don't have the authority to direct or supervise them. As the mayor president's veto statement states, the fundamental structure of a centralized executive and legal department was enacted by the citizens precisely so the city and parish will operate in accordance with consistent and harmonious legal representation and avoid additional needless illegal expenses presented by the ordinance lawsuit states. The attorneys argue in the lawsuit the city council cannot hire a special counsel, although the city of Lafayette can. The ordinance hiring Bastion says she is to represent the council. They also argue that just because the city council disagrees with the advice of the city parish attorney does not mean it is in conflict of interest warranting the hiring of a special attorney. If the city council properly hired Batson, the petition states she is part of the city parish legal team, which gives Logan the authority to fire her. She has not reported to Logan, the legal team, or Guillory. The petition alleges Logan wants the court to forbid Batson from serving as a special counsel to the city council. Okay, moving on. For on Guillory staff to get raises in a continuation of what's happening politically in our city and parish. Pay hikes for other LCG employees stall by Claire Taylor, staff writer. 4 employees in Lafayette Parish Mayor President Josh Guillory's office were approved for pay raises Tuesday, but other Lafayette Consolidated Government and LCG employees won't be receiving a 2% pay raise. Guillory has placed in the 2020-21 budget pay raises for 4 of his employees, totaling $29,513. City and parish councils during the budget review and adoption removed the raises, but Guillory issued a line item veto to restore the raises. On Tuesday, the councils failed to override the veto, so the raises will be returned to the budget and become effective with the start of the 2020-21 fiscal year, which is November 1st. Carlos Harvin, Chief of Minority Affairs, a position Guillory created, will receive a $10,000 a year raise, bringing his salary to $60,000. In the wake of the August fatal shooting of Lafayette resident Trayford Pellerin by Lafayette police, Harvin has come under fire by many in the Black community. Several residents at Tuesday's council meeting spoke in opposition to his pay raise. Robert Benoit, Guillory's chief of staff, who supervises the animal shelter and emergency operations, will receive a $14,550 pay adjustment, bringing his salary to $103,800 a year. Catherine Rue, senior communications specialist, will receive a $2,000 raise, bringing her salary to $49,250. Jenny Moreau, administrative specialist, will receive a $2,963 raise, bringing her salary to $42,213. Guillory, in his veto memo, said some of the employees have taken on extra duties, as though the positions were eliminated, and some worked long hours during the COVID-19 crisis and hurricanes, so the raises are warranted. In his veto message, Guillory said he eliminated 3 positions, changed others, and cut his office's payroll by 25% since taking office in January. Also on Tuesday, an ordinance up for introduction that would have restored a 2% pay raise to most other LCG employees failed to muster the needed votes to progress. The ordinance was sponsored by Guillory, City Council Chairperson Pat Lewis, and Parish Council Chairperson Kevin Nackwood. Previous City Parish Council adopted a policy to automatically provide the pay raises, but Guillory let them out of the 2020-21 budget, citing a drop in revenue due to business closures ordered because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Guillory is now proposing the use of some of the $13 million in COVID-19 federal relief to fund the 2% pay raises. Parish Council approved the ordinance for introduction, with only 3 of its 5 members present Tuesday. Council members Annette Cook and Glenn Lazard were absent. City Council needed all 3 to vote yes to introduce the ordinance. Council member Liz Abear voted no. Abear said many in the community have lost their jobs or were furloughed because of the COVID-19 business closures, making this a bad time to approve raises using taxpayer money. The virtual festivals Acadiana and Rio postponed for a week. Hurricane Delta pushes event back by Ken Sickney, staff writer. If you've yearned all year for the return of festivals Acadiana and Rio, you must yearn a few days more. The festival has been postponed from this weekend to October 16th through the 18th, organizers said Wednesday. The festival event, a mainstay in Lafayette since 1974, and at Girard Park since 1976, was destined for a 1-year seismic shift this year from live to virtual because of the health threat imposed by COVID-19. Now with Hurricane Delta bearing down on the Gulf Coast, the scheduled Friday start of the Transform Festival has been delayed by the dangerous storm that's expected to arrive, possibly at Vermilion Parish the same day. Pat Mould, who plans the event with festival founder Barry Onsley, said, "We're all about live," explaining this week the festival organizers had sought live components to this year's virtual festival. Now they are all about later. 15 live acts were to be performed this weekend at the Acadiana Center for the Arts in Warehouse 535, and interspersed with 5 workshop performances, pre-taped cooking demonstrations, performances taped at the Blue Moon Cafe, KRBS, and more. The festival was scheduled to run through Sunday. Hurricane Delta had other plans. The storm slammed into the Yucatan Peninsula with winds greater than 100 miles per hour Wednesday morning and turned for the Gulf Coast, where it was expected to speed up for its expected midday Friday arrival. That will disrupt but not halt plans for the virtual festival. Well, said Wednesday morning that organizers wanted something different, and they got all of that. But plans call for continuity in their content as well. Festival merchandise, clothing, pins, posters, and more will be sold locally at several locations and online at the festival's website. Okay, it's almost a half hour in our broadcast this morning, so we'll turn to the day in history, the zodiac, and the funerals in the Acadiana area for today. Today is Thursday, October 8th, the 282nd day of 2020. There are potentially 84 shopping days left in this year. This monumental year, 2020, will definitely go down in historical history books as one of the most incredible years in terms of not always positive happenings. Today's highlight in history: on October 8th, 1871, the Great Chicago Fire erupted. Fires also broke out in Pestego, Wisconsin, and in several communities in Michigan. On this date, in 1934, Bruno Hauptmann was indicted by a grand jury in New Jersey for murder and death of the kidnapped son of Charles and Anne Morrow Lindbergh. 1945, President Harry S. Truman told a press conference in Tippensville, Tennessee, that the secret scientific knowledge behind the atomic bomb would be shared only with Britain and Canada. 1985, the hijackers of the Italian cruise ship Achille Lauro killed American passenger Leon Klinghoffer, who was in a wheelchair, and threw his body overboard. 1997, scientists reported the Mars Pathfinder had yielded what could be the strongest evidence yet that Mars might once have been hospitable to life. 1998, the House triggered an open-ended impeachment inquiry against President Bill Clinton in a monumentous 258 to 176 vote. 31 Democrats joined majority Republicans in opening the way for nationally televised impeachment hearings. In 2014, Thomas Eric Duncan, a Liberian man who was the first person diagnosed with Ebola in the United States, died at Texas Health Presbyterian Hospital in Dallas 10 days after being admitted. In 2017, Harvey Weinstein was fired from the Weinstein Company amid allegations that he was responsible for decades of sexual harassment. 10 years ago today, imprisoned Chinese dissident Liu Xiaobo won the 2010 Nobel Peace Prize, prompting a furious response from China. Also in the state, British aid worker Linda Norgrove, who had been taken captive in Afghanistan, was killed during a U.S. Special Forces rescue attempt, apparently by a U.S. grenade. 5 years ago, Volkswagen's top U.S. executive, Michael Horn, offered deep apologies yet sought to distance himself from the emissions scandal enveloping the world's largest automaker, asserting before a congressional subcommittee that top corporate officials had no knowledge of the cheating software installed in 11 million diesel cars. 1 year ago, White House counsel Pat Cipollone sent a letter to House leaders declaring that President Donald Trump would not cooperate with what the letter called an illegitimate impeachment investigation. Democrats responded that the letter was a clear reason to write an article of impeachment charging Trump with obstruction. In today's birthdays, entertainment reporter Rona Barrett is 84, actor Paul Hogan is 81, civil rights activist Reverend Jesse Jackson is 79, comedian Chevy Chase is 77. Chevy Chase from the very first season of SNL and the major motion picture star after that. Author R.L. Stine of the horror genre book writing author is 77. TV personality Sarah Purcell is 72. Actor Sigourney Weaver is 71 today. Rhythm and blues singer Robert Kool Bell from Kool and the Gang is 70. Producer-director Edward Swick is 68. Comedian Darrell Hammond is 65. Actor Kim Williams is 59. Rock singer Steve Perry is 57. Gospel rhythm and blues singer CeCe Winans is 56. Rock musician C.J. Ramone from the Ramones is 55. And actor Dylan Neal is 51. And actor-screenwriter Matt Damon is 50 years old today. Turning to the horoscope, if you're a Libra, use your energy wisely. Do your best to keep the peace. Consider where you will make the most progress and work on something that will bring concrete results. Exercise discipline and common sense. Scorpio, stop being so hard on yourself. It's time to do something that brings you peace, happiness, and satisfaction. You are overdue for a change. Sagittarius, energy and enthusiasm will help you excel. Don't waste time on trivial matters. Trust in what you know, not in hearsay. Someone will lead you astray if given the chance. Capricorn, you may want to rethink how you handle your personal and professional affairs. Staying balanced will be necessary if you wish to bring about a change at home or work. Aquarius, be a leader, not a follower. Work on personal adjustments that will make your life more enjoyable. Don't say anything you don't mean or make promises you aren't going to honor. Pisces, spend more time nurturing meaningful relationships. Look for innovative ways to help a cause or those in need. A financial opportunity is heading your way and romance is favored. Aries, control your emotions and temper. Concentrate on taking care of your responsibilities and living up to your expectations. Work alone if possible to avoid interference and don't share your thoughts with colleagues. Taurus, a unique idea will help you seal a deal or attract interest. A work-related matter will encourage lifestyle change. Romance is favored. Gemini, take better care of your home and health. Doing research will be vital if you want to avoid making a mistake. Refuse to let anyone take advantage of your kindness or skills. Cancer, let your intuition guide you. A positive change will lead to an exciting opportunity. A partnership will turn out to be a blessing in disguise once you iron out your differences. Leo, get involved in something that concerns you. Don't watch from the sidelines. An opportunity to do something that will benefit others will work out well. And finally, Virgo, my birth sign. Concentrate on your priorities and bring about the changes necessary to achieve your goals. Romance will enhance your relationship with someone special. Well, that is very true because my 34th wedding anniversary is Sunday. So that is in line with what is happening anniversary-wise to me this week. And as always, a horoscope is an entertainment feature not based on scientific fact. The funerals in the Acadiana area today involve Kenneth Fruge, Melanson Funeral Home, Chapel in Opelousas at 10 a.m., Floyd Marks, Melanson Funeral Home, Chapel in Opelousas at 3 p.m., and Douglas Mistich, Our Lady of Fatima Catholic Church, 2319 Johnson Street. Getting back into the news cycle, Lafayette Parish retail sales dip in August by Adam Daigle, Acadiana business editor. Retail sales in Lafayette Parish dropped for the second straight month in August, but continuing their climb back since the start of the pandemic, increasing by 16.4% since the low point in April. Parish reported $517.5 million in total sales that month, which was lower than the $536.5 million in July and $562.4 million in June, according to data from the Lafayette Economic Development Authority. The month was behind the $527 million in August 2019, but still the third highest total in August on record. For the year, it puts the parish at $4.3 billion in sales, 2.7% off last year's pace of $4.14 billion, but still 2% ahead of 2018's total of $3.96 billion. We're still holding our own on taxable sales and unemployment numbers as we recover from the economic shutdown in April. However, as I've said before, we will get a true snapshot of the economy once the boost from the federal stimulus payments and enhanced unemployment benefits ends, Leader President and CEO Greg Goldthrow said. Will those monies bridge us until the economy fully reopens? What will the economy look like in the meantime? We're cautiously optimistic that our economy will continue to see increases in operating restrictions as operating restrictions are eased and people feel comfortable resuming pre-pandemic activities. In the city of Lafayette, sales were down a bit to $355.7 million from $367.6 million in July and $366.5 million a year ago. It was still better than the $343.6 million in August 2018 and the third highest recorded for the month of August. Compared with a year ago, sales in Youngsville, Carencro, Scott, and Tucson were up, with Youngsville posting the biggest increase from $23 million in August of 2019 to $26.9 million. Sales in the unincorporated areas also jumped $42.5 million to $44 million. Since April, sales in Lafayette have jumped 20.8%, the highest among all municipalities. Youngsville has increased by 8.8%, and all of the municipalities except Tucson has posted an increase. Other data points of note in the city of Lafayette in August: grocery stores continue to be a big winner in the pandemic, as sales topped $28 million, the highest mark on record. It topped the previous record of $27 million in March, and sales are 13% ahead of last year's total, which was the highest on record. Bars and nightclubs reported just under $2 million in sales for the second straight month, as that industry faces pandemic restrictions. It was the third month since March to finish below $2 million, and sales are now 31% behind last year's total. Hardware sales totaled $3.5 million, the most recorded since December of 2017, and the most of any month on record that was not December. Has a lot to do with the hurricanes, folks. Auto repair shop receipts totaled $6.2 million, the highest in 3 years. Hotel motel receipts totaled $3.67 million, the highest since February, due mostly to the influx of Lake Charles area residents following Hurricane Laura. The beleaguered industry remains 40% behind last year's total. Sales tax collection numbers are gathered by the Lafayette Parish School System. Church services bill gets panel approval. Congregations would be able to gather during pandemic by Mark Ballard, Capitol Bureau editor. Legislation to provide immunity from civil liberty and criminal prosecution for church offices holding services during public health emergencies advanced from the Louisiana House Committee on a 6-3 vote. The Reverend Tony Spell, who was charged with half a dozen misdemeanor offenses for violating coronavirus gathering restrictions, called Democratic Governor John Bel Edwards godless during his testimony in favor of the legislation. Spell also said 8 members of his congregation were fired from their jobs because they didn't get along with the restrictions. Members of the Life Tabernacle Church in Central accounted for the House Administration of Criminal Justice Committee instances when they were reprimanded by employees for not taking COVID-19 tests because they had attended services at the church. Hardly anyone attending the hearing wore a mask. House Bill 9 by Representative Danny McCormick would provide immunity for those arrested for assembling in church. The proposal also will be retroactive back to March 11th, which coincides with the governor's directives to stay at home and limit public gatherings to 10 people to mitigate the spread of COVID-19. Spell defied these rules, saying the directives violated his religious rights. The East Baton Rouge Parish District Attorney's Office filed a bill of information charging Spell with misdemeanor infractions that carry a $500 fine and up to 90 days in jail. Spell said he's not guilty. Some people didn't attend church just out of the fear of being arrested and humiliated, McCormick said. We need to send a clear message to Louisiana that our religious freedoms are alive and well. McCormick, an Oil City Republican, organized a protest in May outside the governor's mansion that featured a number of officials with Spell's church. The pastor couldn't attend because he was under house arrest, and those in attendance at the protest were fed by Life Tabernacle. As an American, it makes me sad that this bill is necessary, said State Representative Alan Seaball, Republican from Shreveport. Places the responsibility of one's health on that official, said Representative Tony Bacala, a Prairieville Republican, said of HB 9. Jeffrey S. Winterbrink, a Baton Rouge lawyer who is representing Spell in federal and state court actions, said Edwards overstepped his authority in issuing declarations that diminish the constitutional protections for freedom of religion by limiting the size of in-person church services. Though the courts generally frown upon passing laws that go back in time and dispute what had been legal, Winterbrink said, HB 9 is clarifying the existing law that was applied incorrectly so it would overcome that reluctance. At one point, the legislative hearing turned into a debate over the meaning of the biblical book of Romans. Criminal Justice Chairman Ted James, a Democrat from Baton Rouge, said Romans 13:8 clearly tells believers that they should obey civil laws, but other interpretations of Romans postulates that its writer, the Apostle Paul, dealt with the governance of the church and not a civil government, Spell counted. The meaning of Romans has been a difference of opinion among theological scholars for centuries. Spell said the reading means, I owe no man anything, especially a godless governor who denies that I have been prosecuted for my faith. Bacala, a retired deputy, noted that Romans is a guiding authority for police officers, and his personal interpretation is that the biblical passage allows the legislature to correct what he called an oversight in Edwards' health emergency declarations. My vote needs to be for a vote for what I think God wants me to do, which is to open the churches, he said. Okay, continuing with state news, Foster gets simple send-off. Former governor laid to rest in Franklin by Tyler Bridges, staff writer. In Franklin, befitting his Lukey style, former Governor Mike Foster received a simple send-off, complete with military honors, at his hometown cemetery Wednesday in St. Mary Parish. Foster's family and dozens of friends and political luminaries attended the 20-minute funeral service at the Franklin Cemetery, following a small private ceremony at his antebellum home, Oaklawn Manor. Foster, who died of natural causes Sunday at 90, was buried in an oak casket in a cement vault under a sprawling live oak. This was exactly the kind of funeral he would have wanted former Governor Bobby Jindal, who owed his start in Louisiana politics to Foster, said in an interview afterward. He never wanted to come to Baton Rouge when he was governor. Why would he want to come to Baton Rouge for his funeral? He didn't like crowds and all that attention. Foster, who was governor from 1996 to 2004, didn't want a memorial service at the state capitol. Governor John Bel Edwards, who didn't know Foster well, recounted Foster's accomplishments as governor, the creation of the Taylor Opportunity Program for the Student Scholarship Program, or TOPS, the formation of the Louisiana Community and Technical College System, repeated pay raises for K-12 teachers, and more than $1 billion to upgrade the state's colleges and universities. Foster first won election in 1995, running as an anti-crime Christian conservative, but as governor, a Republican working with a majority Democrat legislature, Foster, who had switched parties during the campaign, found a way to deliver to both sides. Members of the Louisiana National Guard honored Foster, who had been their commander as governor and was a pilot during the Korean War, with a 3-volley salute, a rendering of taps, and a ceremonial folding of the American flag that had been draped over his coffin. A National Guard officer knelt and handed it to Foster's widow, Alice, who was sitting under an awning with Foster's 2 children from a previous marriage. Murphy and Ramel, with 2 of their children from a previous marriage, Paul and Troy West. Foster's grandsons, the pallbearers, then lifted the casket over the cement vault. The Reverend Stephen Crawford, the priest of St. Mary's Episcopal Church, where Foster worshiped, blessed the casket and said a few words. Jimmy Daniel, the owner of Daniel Granite, then lowered the casket in the vault. He's got with me years ago to put the cement vault into the ground, Daniel said after the service. We called him Uncle Mike. Among those attending the services were Hunt Downer and Charlie DeWitt, who served as Speakers of the House during Foster's first and second terms, respectively. Stephen Perry, who served as Chief of Staff for most of Foster's tenure, and Andy Complin, who replaced Perry for the final 1.5 years, Roy Fletcher, Foster's campaign media advisor, and Vic Stelly, who, as a state representative, wrote the Stelly plan approved by voters in 2002, which generated extra tax revenue by shifting the tax burden from the poor to the higher income taxpayers. Since Foster died, former aides have been telling and retelling their favorite stories. Perry remembered how Foster called him every weekday between 6 a.m. and 6:15 a.m. after reading The Advocate, and while he was on the treadmill, we would talk about what the press was interested in and the issues of the day, Perry said. Okay, continuing with state news. Petition challenges council hearing, silences attorney acting without authority by Claire Taylor. Attorneys of City Parish Attorney Greg Logan filed a petition Wednesday. I'm sorry, I already read the story. Zuckerberg funded free election grants and draw ear of Louisiana Attorney General Landry filed suit seeking to have arrangement declared illegal. Staff writer. Local officials, election officials across Louisiana, in recent weeks perked up at an opportunity as Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg was funding through a nonprofit organization free money to run elections in a pandemic. But after Attorney General Jeff Landry caught wind of the endeavor, the Republican official put his foot down, warning registrars or voters, clerks of court, and other officials not to pursue the money. Now all of the local officials have backed off and are no longer pursuing the funding. Landry is filing suit, asking the court to declare the arrangement illegal and warning of the corrosive influence of outside money on Louisiana election officials. The nonprofit handling out the money across the U.S. For the Center for Tech and Civic Life said 26 election officials across the state applied for grants with a total potential amount of about $7.8 million. Now, all these applications have been withdrawn by the officials after Landry's intervention. Secretary of State Kyle Ardoin, the state chief elections official, urged locals to apply for the grants after discovering the opportunity. Ardoin said in a statement he encouraged all clerks to apply for that grant money to ensure all parishes had the same opportunity. Now, Ardoin, also a Republican, has sided with Landry and is backing legislation by State Representative Blake Miguez, Republican ERATH, to outlaw the practice. When we realized there were potential ethical issues with accepting the grant money, we consulted with the Attorney General and subsequently advised clerks to reject any grant money awards, Ardoin said. The dust-up makes Louisiana one of several states, many of them hotly contested swing states in the presidential election, where a partisan debate has exploded over whether it is appropriate for private money to help fund elections. And it comes as the state prepares to hold a major election in a pandemic when voters are casting mail-in ballots at unheard-of rates and local election officials are facing challenges paying for precautionary measures. The State House and Governmental Affairs Committee on Wednesday fiercely debated the bill by Miguez, which Landry's office said would clarify that the private contributions for elections are not legal. Several registrar of voters told the Advocate and the Times-Picayune that they have additional costs because of the pandemic and could use additional money paying for them. Those costs include equipment, PPE gear, and wages for election workers, which will be staffing early voting sites for longer hours as part of a court-mandated pandemic plan for the November and December elections. Registrar of voters offices across the state are really understaffed, says Sandra Wilson, registrar for the Orleans Parish. Especially in an election like this, which is high volume, we have to work many extra hours beyond normal hours to keep pace. The mail-in ballot sounds great, but the cost is over $1 per unit. Where is the money coming from? East Baton Rouge Parish Clerk of Court Doug Wilburn said, noting that last week 23,000 mail-in ballot requests have come into Baton Rouge, more than 3 times the number of previous requests. The funding is supposed to come from the Secretary of State's appropriations, and the office was not commenting on the grants. The suit is not the first time Landry has found himself on the opposite side of Zuckerberg and other big tech firms. The Attorney General has repeatedly crusaded against Google, Facebook, and Twitter for what he sees as an anti-conservative bias and anti-competitive practices. He thrust Louisiana into an antitrust probe against Google, joining an effort of attorney generals across the country. Okay, moving on. Black rail bird that thrives in Louisiana marsh named endangered species by Tristan Barrick, staff writer. After a decade of petitions and lawsuits from environmental groups, the federal government has granted endangered species protection to a mysterious marsh bird that has recently been found to have a small and fragile population on the Louisiana coast. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service announced Wednesday that the eastern black rail will be listed as threatened under the Endangered Species Act, a move that would have boost conservation actions in the few remaining places the bird is known to thrive, including Cameron and Vermilion parishes. Threatened results is a notch below the most dire listing, endangered. It means the species is likely to become endangered in the foreseeable future in much or all of its range. This listing is absolutely necessary as a last gasp to save the species before it goes extinct, said Everett Johnson, Audubon, Louisiana's Director of Bird Conservation. The beignet-sized black rail has red eyes, dark gray feathers, and big feet. It rarely flies, instead preferring to creep around remote wetlands at night. The birds once range across salt and freshwater marshes along the Atlantic and Gulf Coast, but these habitats have been disappearing under growing cities and farms. Black rail populations have declined by much as 90% in some coastal areas. Okay, and finally, we'll go to sports story in about a minute. Well, as of right now, our audio will be cut off on our TV stations, but you can continue to listen to the news broadcast, which I only have one sports story left. You can tune in on our online streaming service, which is Cypress Street Radio, CYPRESS Street Radio. Just click in on your browser, Cypress Street Radio, come to our homepage and click on the play button. You can also listen to us on our YouTube channel, which is AOC Community Media. The UL game postponed over Delta worries. Coastal matchup moved to next Wednesday by Kevin Foote. With Hurricane Delta's expected arrival in the area on Saturday, UL's home meeting with Coastal Carolina has been postponed on Wednesday, October 14th. The game will feature two undefeated Sun Belt teams at 6:30 p.m. on ESPN. UL was first scheduled to play Coastal Carolina on October 17th, but when the Cajuns' October 7th road game at Appalachian State was postponed, UL elected to push that game up to a week to October 10th. Of course, the weather had other ideas with the news this week that Delta can make a direct hit on Lafayette and the Acadiana region sometime on Friday. Next Wednesday's game will be at Cajun Field if the hurricane doesn't damage the facility. The Cajuns would travel to Coastal Carolina if necessary. Both UL and Coastal Carolina entered the matchup at 3-0. The Cajuns won at Iowa State and at Georgia State before winning a 2018 nail-biter in the game's final play at home last week against Georgia Southern. Coastal Carolina's offense has been busy this season with big wins at 38-23 at Kansas, 43-21 against Campbell, and 52-23 against Arkansas State. Redshirt freshman quarterback Grayson McCall has led the way with 42-63 passing for 728 yards with 9 touchdowns and just 1 interception, as well as 31 carries for 139 yards and 2 more scores. Running back C.J. Maribel leads the ground game with 190 yards and 3 scores in 3 games. Coastals beat the Cajuns 30-28 at Cajun Field in 2018. 4UL bounced back with a dominating 48-7 road win over the Chanticleers last season. And that's it for all the news. So I know that we all know this Delta storm is approaching fast. So everybody, please be safe out there. If you need to evacuate, like myself and my family, just be careful when on the roads. And just be smart and be safe. But getting back to the news, this is Local News Live. It is a free feature that we have every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m., where we broadcast news reports, local and state and sports, and the day in history, Zodiac, and the funerals in the area, with support from the Acadiana Advocate. We appreciate their support at this time, and we also appreciate you listening in. We couldn't do this without our listeners. If you're interested in becoming a reader in the program, go to our website, which is aocinc.org. Go to the volunteer form section, fill out the form for volunteer newspaper reader, and become part of our newspaper reading family. From now, we're doing it at our home studios, which I am today in my home studio, getting ready to evacuate. So you can become part of that program if so interested. Also, I want you to be safe and smart and healthy out there, and still take precautions. COVID-19 is still a part of our day-to-day living, so please be smart, especially if you're going to go on the road and evacuate. Just be real smart, wear your mask, and all the other protocols we need to do to combat the spread of this awful, awful, awful disease. And again, this is Bruce Cohen, always been Bruce Cohen, and be kind to each other, and please have a great day and stay safe. Well, hopefully there may be a broadcast tomorrow morning. it's possible that we will have a broadcast tomorrow morning, so tune in if possible. If not, we'll be back Monday morning. Thank you and have a great day.